everybody's dying. So she started giving them steroids. And they came to her and said, hey, you're breaking the rules. You're not allowed to give people steroids. And she said, yeah, but my patients are living and your patients are dying. And then 6 months later, the FDA and the CDC reversed their advice on that and said, okay, you can give them steroids. And so I was very, very lucky to have my own personal doctor be on the forefront of that. And so I trust her more than anything. Now I want to go back.
What a blessing. I mean, yes.
Go ahead.
What a blessing. No, you're just so fortunate to have someone with deep medical knowledge who is a decent human being and not insane. And, most people, including me, do not have access to a doctor like that. And I've met doctors I like, and I'm sure they're competent in their specialties, but I can't get past it. It's like, oh, I'm great at my job. I killed a bunch of people, but I'm a great person. It's like, no, it's too big a sin to overlook. Like, you have no credibility unless you apologize for that and explain how you reached that wrong conclusion. That's like, anyway, I can't get past it.
When I got vaccine injured, I was 4 or 5 weeks after my second dose. And I bought the propaganda like everybody else. I didn't have my spidey senses like you because I have a bone disease, and I was convinced that they told you that when you get if you get COVID, it's going to go right to your weakest organ and kill you. And so I knew I was in bad shape with my bone disease, and I was afraid it was going to go to my bones and kill me. And so I was the first one in line to get that vaccine. And so 4 or 5 weeks after my second dose, I was still sick as a dog with headaches and I had a stiff neck. I had exhaustion all day. My joints ached. I had fevers. I didn't know what to do. So I tweeted about it, and I said, is there anybody else having these symptoms? And luckily, there's a doctor named Dr. Uganda who was he was starting a study to try to treat people like me. And he said he was also trying to come up with a protocol to treat people with long COVID. And his theory was that people with long COVID would present the same way with people who were vaccine injured. And he showed me biologically that I did present. He goes, you've never had COVID, but it looks like because of these tests we ran, your biological markers look as if you have long COVID, but you don't because you never had COVID. So he's like, so whatever your symptoms are, it had to come from the vaccine. So then he got me on. He was the one who told me that they were lying about ivermectin. He was the one who told me that ivermectin was considered a miracle drug before COVID. They were even looking to ivermectin to cure cancer before COVID. And I looked it up, and that's true. And so they always knew that it was a great drug, but of course nobody could make money off it. And if it actually did treat COVID, they couldn't get their emergency medical use authorization for their vaccines. So we've been lied to about. So I just want to say thanks to Dr. Uganda. He was the first one who helped me, and then he said that you better get your personal doctor on board, and then she was. So I was taken care of in that way, and now I have Dr. Pierre Corey taking care of me and a few other people. So I am taken care of. But I want to show this clip now because this is of Jon Stewart when he came on your Crossfire show on CNN. I'm going to show he's here giving you a dressing down, but that was back when you were in the employ of the problem rather than the solution. And Jon Stewart was, as of yet, relatively uncorrupted by the gaping maw that eats every other political voice in the network structure and shits out a yes man on the other end. So let's watch this real briefly.
Ended propaganda without even the illusion of an argument.
That's right. So what happened to you? You went from there. You made atonement for the Iraq war, and then they took your advertisers away, and you started to tell the truth about everything: the Syrian war, Ukraine war, COVID, vaccines, everything. You started to be the only person in news to tell the truth about the biggest stories of our time. And Jon Stewart went on to hang a medal on a Nazi at Disney World in service of the war machine. And he'll never apologize for it, and he'll never even acknowledge that he did it. Just go, hey, I got tricked, or something. So he won't even say that because he won't tell people the truth about the Ukraine war. Because for a second, he told the people the truth about where the COVID virus came from, which was a lab in Wuhan. He told the truth on Stephen Colbert's show, and then he was ostracized from polite society for over a year, and it damaged him. It damaged him so much that he was willing to hang a medal on a Nazi at Disney World.
The guy covered it up, though. He
And
didn't know till
there
after.
it is.
See, he put a red thing on it. about it.
And then he had to go give a tongue bath to two of the most bloodthirsty warmongers in the history of our country, Hillary Clinton and Condi Rice. And then when he did cover COVID and the vaccine, he didn't bring on Dr. Robert Malone or McCullough or Pierre Corey or anybody who had a counter narrative to the establishment lies. He brought on three liars for the establishment and pretended like he was so he did propaganda for big pharma and the establishment, not only for wars, he's doing it currently, and he's not only put for vaccines but for COVID, for everything. And meanwhile, there you are going to visit Julian Assange at Belmarsh, and here you are bringing on RFK Jr. to tell the truth about big pharma. So what a complete different arc between Jon Stewart and you. He became a yes man to the establishment who's lying to his lying to his audience and afraid to tell the truth. He'll never tell his audience the truth about Ukraine. He'll never tell his audience the truth about COVID or lockdowns or he'll never do that. And he'll never tell where's he on the front lines trying to get Julian Assange out of prison? I don't know. Is he? I don't think so. So I just want to get your reaction to that kind of crazy arc that Jon Stewart had this pompous moral high ground when he came on CNN, and now he's turned into the piece of shit that I make fun of and debunk on a daily basis.
He should wear a bow tie.
So I always thought, well, let me just say it's interesting. I hadn't seen that clip, well, since it happened, because I never watched clips of myself. So it's been almost 20 years. I should say when that aired, I'd already come out and atoned for supporting the Iraq War. And he had a different view. He's always been a neocon, like always. He's never changed. He's been consistent on that, I will say. But he looks a little less appealing than I thought. I mean, he was a preachy little phony, really, from the very beginning. He has talent. I always thought he was pretty funny, actually. He's pretty, I mean, I'm sure you guys know him well.
He's got a lot of talent.
He's fast. So there's that. Yeah, he does. He has talent, for sure. But he was always hollow inside, didn't really believe anything. His beliefs actually just amounted to self-hatred and guilt. That's not a belief system. Those aren't principles. Those are impulses. And so I'm not really surprised that he has become, you know, another Praetorian Guard for the establishment, because that's kind of what he's always been in a way. Like he would do the sort of normal shit they do, like, you know, they love the race stuff. You're a racist. So-and-so's a race. Everything's about race. It's just not that interesting a topic, in my opinion. I've never been very interested in race. It doesn't go anywhere, but he's obsessed with that topic. And in some ways, in retrospect, that's the easiest topic. Everyone's like, oh, it's the hardest topic. No, it's the easiest topic. Because you don't have a conversation. It's just posturing. Nothing ever changes. No one's life is improved. No one actually gets better. No one's improved at all. But the person doing the hectoring gets to feel superior. And that's kind of been his bread and butter for the 25 years. I knew him when he came on. I mean, I'd known him for a while. So for the 25 years I've known him, that's been the sum total of his moral universe. Like, you're a racist, I'm not. And so it's really not surprising that he's wound up sucking up to Condi Rice or, you know, Hillary Clinton or some other totally indefensible warmonger creep. I'm not surprised at all.
You don't think it's useful for him to ask the former First Lady such hard-hitting questions like, what's it like to be a powerful woman? You don't think that's very, you don't think that's...
But again, that's, so we're getting back to the race and gender thing. And like, race and gender are real, and there are differences between the races and the genders or whatever, but they're not actually that, it's not that, first of all, it's not that interesting. It's not the most important thing. And it doesn't go anywhere. So, but that's always where they go. All of these people. They did it with me for years. Once they couldn't cancel my show by pulling the advertising, then I became a white supremacist and a Nazi and a racist. And at some point, I remember thinking to myself in the shower, I don't know, am I a racist? Like, no, I'm not actually. And then I just kind of didn't care after that. But they didn't stop, because that's sort of all they had. They didn't want to like actually debate whether the Syrian gas attacks came from Assad or whether they even existed. They did not want to have that conversation. They didn't want to talk about anything of substance at all. They just wanted to dismiss you as crazy or a bigot. And that's the world that Stewart has lived in for the decades I've known him, I will say.
I think his next big move has got to be that he actually becomes a powerful woman. There just aren't any more chess moves left on the board. Am I right?
I'll honor
Oh,
it.
that's so good.
I had this conversation with Cornel West when he came on the show. And when he came on the show, I was a supporter of his. And when he left, I wasn't. And I tried to impress upon him that when he talks about white supremacy, the majority of people in America who are poor are white. And if you're going to try to lecture coal miners
Yeah.
about white supremacy, it's going to fall flat. And if he's out there being a black activist, he could talk about white supremacy. But if you're trying to run for president and actually oppose the establishment, the last thing you should do is try to lead with trans issues or LGBTQ or because you know what? If you get a living wage for everybody, that helps everybody, especially trans and LGBTQ, black and white. If you get health care for everybody, that helps everybody, meaning black and white. So if you start to, what the establishment wants people like Cornel West to do is to keep talking about white supremacy, to keep talking about trans issues, to keep
That's
talking about
right.
LGBTQ as if they're an oppressed minority like they were in the 90s when I started comedy. Back then, they couldn't get married. They could get fired from their job. They couldn't get housing. That's all over. They have and so to keep pretending like we're living 30 years ago is exactly what the establishment wants to do. And by the way, all this talk about trans issues and talk about white, this doesn't come from the grassroots up. This comes directly from BlackRock and Larry Fink. This comes from Vanguard. This is so the most murderous companies who are raping the planet can shroud themselves in an air of virtue. And how do they do it? They do it by trans issues and LGBTQ and white supremacy and inclusion and equity and all that stuff. And that's there to keep us divided, because the only thing that scares the establishment is when people from the left and the right realize they have more in common that divides us, and they have shared enemy, and that shared enemy is the oligarchy. That's the only thing that scares them. And so if they can keep us talking about race, and if they can keep us talking about gender and ethnicity, that's a gift to them, because it keeps everybody divided. Would you agree with that?
Well, not only would I agree with it vehemently, and that was so nicely explained. I can't really add much to it other than to say there's been research on this. I'm sure you've seen this. The incidence of the phrase racist, white supremacist, white nationalist in the New York Times, which is easily searchable, shot up right after Occupy Wall Street. So I'm not alleging a conspiracy. I think it's a conspiracy of instinct, like, oh, wait, the one thing you can't criticize is finance. Let's get the peasants mad at each other. There's no question about that. I mean, in my opinion, watching, the real crimes are mostly financial. And I'm just amazed. I've lived here for 54 years, and I have never one time on television or any public forum with a big audience heard a real debate about taxes. So we tax people twice as much for working as we do for investing. Why do we do that? Right? So does that mean that investing is twice as virtuous as working? Do we seek to discourage work? I mean, we seek to discourage smoking. That's why we tax cigarettes so heavily. But we tax work at twice the rate of investing. So we're saying investors are twice as good people. They're making twice as important a moral choice as someone who just goes to work every day. Like, that's insane. Why don't we have parity in tax rates? And by the way, maybe there's some like crazy complex economic reason that we don't. I don't know. I'm very open-minded. Maybe if we did that, America would collapse. Why don't you explain it to me? Why don't you explain that to me? Why people are getting taxed at half the rate for investing that I'm paying for working? And no one can. And by the way, well, maybe someone can. No one has, because we've never had that debate. It's more like, trans lives or some stupid academic bullshit debate about, I don't know, what. None of this stuff is relevant to me. And I'm not I make a lot more than the average person. You know, what if I made 50 grand a year? This would be a deeply relevant debate. But America has not been treated to that debate because we're arguing about race. Endless race stuff. And last point, which is obvious, I'm not sure anybody could find tangible ways in which any black American or any white American has benefited
I was going to watch the
from
Candace
the furious
interview,
debate
Candace Parker interview,
and chin-tugging and yelling about race over the past 5 years. You can find one person other than the chicks who run BLM who have all those houses.
Oh, you did send it to me. Yeah, you did.
I
didn't watch it.
Oh, okay.
I love him. No, but I mean, aside from like the obvious Charlotte.
Oh yeah, I saw that title.
And I'm sorry, I was going to add one thing because I know Cornell and I've always really liked Cornell. I went to Africa with him 20 years ago with Sharpton and had the best time ever. And I think he's legit smart. I will say that. I mean, he like reads Russian language, which is hard. And he has good instincts, but the fact that his default is always this shallow, effectively neoliberalism, which he would hate it if he heard me say that, but it's true. Why is that? He knows better. He's not dumb. He knows what's happening. And the truth is just to cover. It's his defense mechanism. Like he doesn't want to, he does kind of want, still an endowed chair at Princeton. So if they come for him at all, he's like, race, trans, whatever. Like it's purely his force field. That's all it is. That's my opinion.
So
anyway.
So you are correct. I was a big fan of Dr. Cornel West again until he came on my show, and then he is really smart, like you said. He reads Russian. All this stuff. And that's why it was so disappointing when he pretended he was dumber than a pothead jagoff comedian for that entire interview.
Exactly.
He tried to make the case that Donald Trump tried to overthrow the peaceful transfer of power on January 6th, which I know he's smarter than. And a bunch of Second Amendment gun nuts showed up at the Capitol to try to overthrow the government, and son of a bitch, they all forgot their guns. Isn't that the weirdest thing? Oh my God! It's like, Vinny, you didn't bring the guns? No, I brought the mittens. Anyway, of course. He knows better. And then I tried to point out that, one of his issues is Stop Cop City, people who are protesting the expansion of the police state in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I tried to point out to him that the same RICO laws that, by the way, were invented to go after the mafias, which was why everybody was okay with them. Well, you're only going to use them to go after the mafia. Well, now they're using them to go after Donald Trump, a former president who's a political enemy of the establishment and the number one opponent of the current president, Joe Biden. They used the RICO statute to go after him and indict him. Not only did they use the same RICO statute to go after Stop Cop City protesters, they used the same grand jury. The same grand jury indicted them, and I tried to point that out to Cornel West. And when I said, "You see the game that's being played now," he pretended he didn't, and then he called me a Trumper. And so for that, I don't think I can forgive him, and I won't. And I won't stop bringing it up either. Just like I won't stop bringing up.
That's just so, but it's so sad though. It's so sad. I mean, because Cornel, the whole shtick is, I'm a free man. I'm totally, I'm an old blues man. He's always saying that, right? And he could be. He actually could be a free man, because he has all the qualities required. He's self-aware. He's smart. He's wildly articulate, and he's a good dude, actually, in my opinion. So why not be? And I think he's had a series of, very complex personal life, and they basically just kind of have him. Like he needs the gig, and so he has to. Repeat the slogans.
And that's why he won't.
It bums me out every time I see him.
It totally bummed me out, and I tried to impress upon him, why do you call Donald Trump a fascist and you won't call Joe Biden a fascist? And you pretend like fascism only comes when Donald Trump is president. We're living in it. We just lived through 3 years of COVID fascism. You were presented with it, and when presented with it and the chance to fight against it, you turned a blind eye to it on purpose, and that's what he did. And his whole class did that because Cornel West is not from the working class. I'm from the fucking working class, not Cornel West. He's lived in ivory towers his whole goddamn life. I was a bricklayer. I worked in masonry. I drove a forklift. I was in the Teamsters. I've been a fucking stand-up comedian for 30 years. There was nothing more blue collar than banging your head against that comedy wall and entertaining drunks at midnight. I've come from that world. Not him. So he lives in ivory towers, and you're always going to be a class loyal, and that's what he was, and that's what he proved to be on my show, and that's what was really disheartening. And he knows he's wrong.
You don't have to be, though. You don't have to be. I will say, as I was hearing about how you grew up, it's like the opposite of how I grew up, and I've kind of reached a lot of the same conclusions that you have. But maybe for different reasons. I just concluded that world is not worth living in. The people aren't that interesting. It's not that great, actually. All the things that people aspire to, when you see it, you're like, it's not that I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be around those people. And so, like, the closer you get, so that's kind of the sad thing. It's like, even if you succeed, if you keep collecting merit badges and wind up wherever you think you want to be on someone's private plane, like with Larry Fink, you realize, like, I don't really want to be on a plane with Larry Fink. He's a pig, actually. He's kind of dumb. He's like smart in some specific way that's made him a billionaire, but like he's not a great person. His wife doesn't respect him, that's for sure, or whatever. Like the familiarity with that world breeds more than contempt, it breeds loathing. At least that's how I feel. Like I have zero interest in ever being in polite society ever again. And that's as heartfelt a statement as I can make.
I'm right there with you, brother. And I just want to go back to this picture because obviously Jon Stewart was photoshopped out of that picture, right? There you are.
John had the greatest honor of all,
like
interviewing
Zenobia.
Hillary and Condoleezza.
Exactly.
As you were doing this, he was interviewing the greatest honor of all, interviewing Hillary Clinton and Condoleezza Rice.
Together, like.
I mean, I'm sure also on the other side of this car is Ben Stiller and Sean Penn. Am I wrong? I mean, where are those guys? Because they could go show up and give Zelensky his Oscar, who I'm sure he had immediately melted down for the money. But where is Sean Penn? Where is Ben Stiller? Where is Jon Stewart? None of those people are there. Isn't that so? Go ahead, speak to that. To me, that just smacks of the phonies that they are, or are they just that easily controlled?
I think they're to varying degrees. Like, I have so many thoughts about the people, specific people, one of whom I know that you just listed. But I would just say, in general, people have a very strong internal herd instinct, and the desire to belong to a larger group and win the approval of that group is right up there with the sex instinct and the desire for food and water. I mean, it's very basic. And I do think it's like a weird anomaly of birth if you don't have that. I actually don't have that, but most people do. And so I sort of cut them a break a little bit. But in the case of Assange, like if you if you follow that case at all and you sort of push a tiny bit, like, well, okay, what's his crime? You know, he spent 4.5 years in the worst prison in the UK. What has he been charged with in the UK? Nothing. He has not been charged with a crime in Great Britain, period. And so why is he in jail? Well, because the US government is trying to indict him, and the British government has agreed to hold him in a maximum security cell in isolation until that's resolved. Well, like, what is this? And then you find out that before he was charged with any crime in the United States, that Mike Pompeo, who is the director of the CIA, decided to kill him, to assassinate him before he'd been charged with a crime. And then you think to yourself, wait a second, are federal appointees in my country allowed to use my tax dollars to murder people who embarrass them? I don't think they're allowed to do that. In fact, I think that's a felony. But Mike Pompeo is not in jail. In fact, he's bombing around to the same donors that, they all go to. And not just on the right, but I mean, Nikki Haley's donors, but they're also Chuck Schumer's donors. And those people are all cool with that our government, using our money in our name, would murder a guy because he dared to embarrass them by uncovering actual crimes that they committed. And everyone knows this, and no one has a problem with it. And none of that is speculation. It's all been proven. And Mike Pompeo was confronted with the fact that he discussed at CIA as its director murdering Julian Assange, and his response was, anybody who leaked that information is guilty of a crime because you violated our classification laws. Really? What about the guy who was discussing on public property as a public official murdering somebody using federal funds? That's not a crime? Are you freaking like it's too crazy for me. I can't deal with it. So once I started to learn more about that, I was like, I'm just going over there. And I love his wife. Stella's a wonderful, as I know, I'm sure you know her, but just really a smart and humane and just decent, good person. And it just bothered me so much that I literally and I didn't have a job. I was like, okay, I'm not doing anything. So it takes 5 hours to get there. I just flew over and went to see him. And it was worse than I imagined.
And, they did the same playbook they did to Julian Assange, they did to Russell Brand, right? So as soon as you start to tell the truth.
Oh, of course. Oh, I noticed.
So they called him a rapist. They said Julian Assange was a rapist. That's the first thing they did. And of course, it took years for that to go away. But now, the lie has power. And so people still think of him as a rapist or a creep or something like that. And and then they did it. You see him do it to Russell Brand. As soon as Russell Brand reached 6 million subscribers on YouTube and was telling the truth about everything, just like you are, they went after him with that same thing. By the way, the stuff that was not new, People. It wasn't women who came to the police complaining about him, or even came to the newspapers complaining about him. It was the newspapers who went and had to fight. They talked to every person in his past and tried to get them to say stuff about him, and then they wrote a sensational hit piece, which is what it was, sensational, and absolutely no charges filed against Russell Brand.
Nowhere.
There's nothing.
I know.
And so somehow immediately YouTube goes, well, we have to take his funding away. And so that's what YouTube did. They tried to take it. They did. They took his advertising away. Although I'm sure they still run ads on it, but they just don't give any money to him.
But you know, I went to go see Russell too, who I love and know pretty well, on that same trip because I wanted to see how he was doing. And I was reminded that, by the way, none of the women, assuming they exist, who accused him were named. So media organizations hear an allegation of a crime, but they only name the accused, but not the accuser. So it's like which is totally wrong. I mean, it's completely immoral. You know, you've been accused of robbing a bank. Which bank, you ask? I'm not going to tell you. But you're a bank robber. I mean, it's like, but by the way, this is the playbook. I read this today. I'm writing a piece about Julian Assange, and so in 2017, his real sin was embarrassing the CIA by revealing the existence of the surveillance program that surveilled a bunch of foreign heads of state, et cetera, et cetera. And Assange, by the way, withheld a lot of the information because he asked the CIA, look, I don't want to get anybody killed. So here's what I'm about to put on WikiLeaks. Tell me if any of it is too far. They wouldn't respond. Anyway, but the CIA found the guy they believed leaked that information to WikiLeaks, and they charged him with that crime, imperiling American national security. A jury did not convict him of that. But guess what happened next? He got busted for kiddie porn. Can you believe it? The guy who offended the CIA turned out to be like a huge kiddie porn guy. But they found it all in his computer, amazingly. And he's in prison now, and he'll be there for the rest of his life. There is a remarkable connection between there's an overlap between the following sets: people who love kiddie porn and people who offend the regime. Have you ever noticed that? It's amazing. And it's enough almost to keep me off the internet at this point, because I mean, they're not going to get me on, I've been married to the same girl for 30 years. I don't drink. So like, I don't know how they're going to get me. It's not going to be on that stuff. So I'm just not going to my computer. That way they can never say I'm a kiddie porn guy.
Well, they could definitely get me on that stuff. People think that Julian Assange, when I meet what I call shitlibs, my ex friends who are still Democrats, and think that by voting for a Democrat, they pat themselves on the back that they're virtuous and they're somehow fighting white supremacy, Nazism, and fascism, and they're
Oh, man.
this whole idea. I had a friend say to me, this is a direct quote. Jimmy, I'll go along with a lot of the shit you said.
Harlan was a
which
liberal,
actually
though.
doesn't
Like,
sound
I mean,
like
he had some conservative.
then
He was a
said,
mix of both, but he
I'm
was mainly
sorry.
liberal. Interestingly enough.
But January 6th undermined our democracy. And I was like, well, that's adorable. That's what you think did it? You think January 6th is what? You don't live in a democracy. We live in an oligarchy, and that was proven over 10 years ago by a Princeton study that what you think and want, no matter how many votes you vote, doesn't have any effect on legislation whatsoever. The only people that affect legislation is the top 10% of the wealthy people in this country, which makes us an oligarchy by definition. Your government was stolen by corporations probably 50 or 60 years ago, which is why workers haven't had a real raise since 1980. And when are you going to get pissed off about that? The answer is never, because the man on the television didn't tell him to get pissed off about that.
Twitch stream, I might do it.
I couldn't agree more.
Although it's still kind of far away. I was looking through some
kill your president in plain
services
view,
that do it.
and then the lone gunman kills the lone gunman, and then they force you to believe what is so clearly a lie, and then they attack you as crazy if you question it, and then you go along with it. Maybe you don't maybe you're not ready for a democracy. I mean, at some point, people have to say, I'm a free man, I'm a citizen, I pay my taxes, I obey most of your stupid laws, and I kind of demand representation, or I'm going to get very ornery. And you see almost none of that. You don't. So, I don't know. People are free when they demand freedom, and people who don't demand freedom don't get it.
We did have, I have to push back a little bit. We said we've never had a real conversation about taxes. We did have a conversation about one tax. And this is, I know, because my brother watches too much cable news. And one day out of nowhere, I'm at his house, and he goes, "Jimmy, we got to get rid of that estate tax."
Yeah, and his free
And I was
speech, his like language was
"What the fuck are
definitely
you talking about?"
a conservative.
And he goes, "The estate tax. That's that's when
Right.
the government takes it." He makes,
All
by the way, my brother makes
libertarian.
about $50,000 a year. Who said this?
There was no language police for
And
him.
he said, that's when if you die and you have millions and millions of dollars, the government just takes half of it. They just take it. I was like, well, that's horrible. Let me know when that becomes a problem, and I'll organize a rally. But until then, maybe you should worry about the T-shirt tax at Walmart, because I'm pretty sure estates don't have 2 cars that don't work on the front lawn.
Put on some George Carlin. His last one is funny because he's like old.
So we did. We
and he
did
looks
have.
old,
We did
and
have a
he's just
discussion
fucking
almost nightly for a few
unleashing it
years
on
about the
fucking
estate
everyone.
tax on network cable news, and that was because they wanted to cut the estate tax, and that's exactly what they did.
He didn't believe in like an
But
afterlife
it's
for
kind
God
of
or
been
anything.
overtaken by events, that debate. It's an interesting debate, and I agree. I would love to hear that debate. Any debate about economics is a good
We
debate
saw
as
it
far
too,
as
eh?
I'm concerned. Any
He was
debate.
in like a
And
black
I'm very
sweater.
open-minded, so like,
He's always in a
convince me.
black sweater, but like he
But that
looked
specific
really old.
debate is kind
He
of
went
moot
off on like
now
religion and
because
kids.
really rich. I mean, if you've
Talking
got
about people's kids.
some family business or whatever, it's a real issue. But if you're a billionaire, it's not an
Yeah, we
issue
put
at
it on
all
just for
because
a
you
little
use our nonprofit system to shield your money, right? So
There's another jack-off I can do without. I'm tired of being told who to admire in this country. Aren't you sick of being told who your heroes ought to be? Being told who you ought to be looking up to. I'll choose my own heroes, thank you very much. And fuck Dr. Phil, too. Dr. Phil said I should express my emotions, so that's what I'm doing. Now, since the last time I rolled through But we shouldn't be worrying about how he's doing at school because, you know, come summertime, he'll be off to camp. Yes, he'll be off to camp, but not to swim and hike and play softball. No, 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 no. Today's child will be sent away to lose weight. He'll be sent to fat camp, or violin camp, or ceramics camp, or computer camp, or leadership camp, whatever the fuck that is. Leadership
I went to
camp.
leadership
Isn't
camp.
that where Hitler went? Specialized, structured summer camps. Gotta keep the little fucker busy, don't they? Gotta keep the little fucker busy. Wouldn't want him to sneak in a little unstructured time in the woods. That wouldn't be any good. God knows he might start jacking off. Now, all of this stupid bullshit that children have been so crippled by has grown out of something called the self-esteem movement. The self-esteem movement began in 1970, and I'm happy to say it has been a complete failure. Because studies have repeatedly shown that having high self-esteem does not improve grades, does not improve career achievement, it does not even lower the use of alcohol, and most certainly does not reduce the incidence of violence of any sort. Because as it turns out, extremely aggressive, violent people think very highly of themselves. Imagine that. Sociopaths have high self-esteem. Who would have thunk, huh? I love when this kind of thing happens. I love when these politically correct ideas crash and burn and wind up in the shithouse. Here's another one that bit the dust. This practice of playing Mozart during pregnancy so the fetus can hear it. It was supposed to increase intelligence. Didn't work. Didn't work. All it did was sell a lot of CDs and piss off a whole lot of fetuses. The self-esteem movement revolved around a single notion, the single idea that every child is special. Boy, they said it over and over and over, as if to convince themselves. Every child is special. And I kept saying, fuck you. Every child is clearly not special. Did you ever look at one of them? Did you ever take a good close look at one of these fucking kids? They're goofy. They're fucking goofy looking. They're too small. They're way too fucking small. They're malapportioned. Their heads don't fit their bodies. Their arms are too weird and everything. They can't walk across the room in a straight line. And when they talk like I got a mouthful of shit. They're incomplete. Incomplete, unfinished work. I never give credit for incomplete work. Now, P.T. Barnum might think they're special, but not me. I have standards. But let's say it's true. Let's grant this. I'm in a generous mood. Let's grant this proposition. Let's say it's true as somehow every child is special. What about every adult? Isn't every adult special too? And if not, then at what age do you go from being special to being not so special? And if every adult is special, then that means we're all special, and the whole idea loses all its fucking meaning. Here's another platitude they jam down your throat. Children are our future. Children are not our future. And I can prove it with my usual flawless logic. Children can't be our future because by the time the future arrives, they won't be children anymore, so blow me! Yes. As you may have noticed, I always like to present a carefully reasoned argument. Raising a child is not difficult. They try to make it into this mysterious, difficult test. Nothing to it. Easiest thing in the world to raise a kid if you follow the steps. First step, you take the kid and you put him out on the street corner. And you leave him there. You come back a week later. If the kid is still there, You got yourself a stupid fucking kid. Then you just proceed from that
Gleason
point.
joke.
It's all bullshit, folks. It's all bullshit, and it's bad for you. Now, you wouldn't know it from some of the things I've said over the years, but I like people. I do. I like people, but I like them in short bursts. I don't like people for extended periods of time. I'm all right with them for a little while, but once you get up past around minute and a half, I gotta get the fuck out of there. And my reason is for one that you may share, possibly. I have a very low tolerance level for stupid bullshit. That's all. Stupid bullshit. You know? And everyone wants to tell you their stupid bullshit. And a lot of them don't know when to stop talking. You ever run into that guy? Doesn't know when to stop talking, just continues running at the mouth like verbal diarrhea. Don't know when the conversation's over. Stupid, trivial shit you don't care anything about. Things you're not even remotely interested in. Did I tell you about my mom and dad? Well, my mom and dad went on vacation down to Mammoth Cave, Kentucky. This is about 6 years ago, I think. Seemed like it was about 6 years ago. 6 or 7, possibly 7, could be. Yeah. Somewhere in there, 6, 7, more than 6, less than 7. Let's call it 6.5. So my mom and dad went on vacation to Mammoth Cave, Kentucky, and my dad found a big rock. What he thought was a big rock, turns out it was a dinosaur turd. A petrified dinosaur turd, 27-pounder. You know, now that I think of it, it might have been 8 years ago. That would have been close to Y2K, wouldn't it? Remember Y2K? Whatever happened? Everybody's all worried about that. Nothing ever happened. Big fuss. Nothing ever happened. You know? God, that's strange, you know? So let's say, we'll say it's 8 years. It was either 8 or 5. So my dad gave my mom this big turd. He said, "Here, Mom, this is a big dinosaur turd. Put it in your purse and take that home." My mom said, "Dad, I don't think this is a dinosaur turd. This thing is still warm. Whoever dropped this thing is still walking around in here, and we better get the fuck out of this cave." 9 years ago. 9. I know it was 9 because my wife was pregnant with our first boy, Mahmoud ibn El Said ben Salam. And he's 10 now. Or is he? He's 11. Maybe he's 11. He's either 11 or 5. And while all this is going on, you're searching through your mind for something graceful and diplomatic you can say to bring the conversation to a close. And all I can ever come up with is, "Shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up!" But you can't say that. Good manners don't permit it. You have to find another way, and I go to body language. I try to use my body language to show that the conversation's over. I find myself leaning at a 45-degree angle, trying to indicate the direction I'd like to go if this person would just shut the fuck up. And that might even give him a verbal cue. Surgery. Surgery. I'm late for surgery. I'm having my ears sewn shut. You know? Yeah. Same people on the phone. Same people on the phone. Don't know when to hang up. Don't know when the conversation's over. Dumb, trivial shit. Dumb questions. So what are you guys gonna do 5 summers from now? We haven't made any plans. Marge wants to go to the beach. The kids kind of like it at the lake, and I want to go to the mountains. Grandma wants to visit her sister in Frog Balls, Arkansas. How about you? Have you made any plans? It's never too early to make plans. We're going to Norway in 2025. Did you know that up until the 1950s, Norway's economy was based largely on fishing? But now, thanks to improved drilling techniques and the expansion of the global economy, once again, searching through your mind for something gentle you can say, blow it out your ass comes to mind, or shut your fucking pie hole, or if your friend prefers cake, shut your fucking cake hole. But you can't say these things. And you can't use body language on the phone. Well, you can always amuse yourself, you know. Or if it's your mother, you show your mother respect, you put her on speakerphone. But that doesn't move the conversation along. You have to find another trick, and I go to tone of voice. Do you ever use your tone of voice to try to talk them into a soft landing? You try to coax the person toward the end. Good. Okay. Good. All right then. Good. Right.
Yo,
okay.
what's up, you
Good.
boy?
Okay.
How you doing?
Welcome. Oh fuck! There he goes again. The cocksucker.
GoldenEye, yeah. What?
You remember my neighbor with the burns on 90% of her body? Well, she burned the other 10% now. She was lighting a fart and her bush caught fire. Listen, Reverend. Reverend, I hate to be rude, but I just took a 3.5-hour shit. And I'm bleeding from the asshole. Well, I don't have any mercurochrome. Yes, I'll put a Snoopy Band-Aid on it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. You do that for me. Yes, say a prayer for my asshole. Thank you very much. You have to resort to these tactics because many people do not understand what a phone call should be or what a phone call is. Ideally, a phone call is the brief exchange of a few vital pieces of information. This is a phone call. Hey, Steve, what time's the circle jerk start tonight? 10 o'clock. Okay, listen, I'm going to be a little bit late. You'll have to start without me. Oh, don't worry, I'll catch up. I'm eating a whole bunch of oysters and watching a horny movie. It's called Tarzan Fucks a Zebra. Russell Crowe. Well, it's kind of a fantasy. Right now, Renee Zellweger is blowing a unicorn. That's a phone call. It should not be a 2.5-hour harangue of your third cousin describing her mailman's liposuction. God, people are fucking boring. People are just fucking boring. You know, it would be great for a guy like me just to be in a coma. Huh? Wouldn't that be great? Nothing to do all day. You just crap out and breathe through a fucking tube. They feed you through a tube. There's nothing to do. Whoa, you talk about being a couch potato. That's it, man. No phone calls coming in. Nobody dropping by unexpectedly. And if they do drop by, you're completely unaware of it. Because you're in a fucking coma. And you're practically clinically dead. And you don't have to listen to their stupid shit. Their stupid shit, like about their new ride-around lawnmower with the two-tone horn and the GPS in case they get lost on the lawn. And their boss and their job and their car and their kids. Jesus fucking Christ. Their kids. Folks, nothing worse. Nothing worse than to be stuck somewhere with some married asshole and have to listen to him tell you about his fucking kids. Let me tell you something, folks. Nobody cares about your children, okay? You don't care. You don't care. No. Nobody cares about your children. I speak for everyone. I've been appointed by the rest of the group to inform you we don't care about your children. That's why they're your children. So you can care about them and we don't have to bother. But they tell you anyway, Todd is in the 7th grade now. He's in the cheese club. Giselle is 5, and already she's had 9 periods. Johan is 11, and he pretty much sits around the house hallucinating all the time. Then they want to show you the pictures. Here's another ordeal. The pictures of these little gargoyles that they have loosed from their loins. A lot of these professional mommies, boy, they think there's nothing better than having a baby. Oh, they think it's the biggest thing in the world, like it's a big event, having a baby. I call it pumping out a unit. That's all they're doing. That's all they're doing, pumping out a fucking unit. Boom, boom. Like some of them like assembly lines, like a factory. Boom, every fucking year. Boom. Hey, Jeff, want a kid? Boom. How about twins? Boom, 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 boom. Polluting the earth. Polluting the earth with these creatures who have no future. They have no future. Have you pictured what this planet is going to be like in 40 to 50 years? It's going to be a big smoking ball of shit. A big smoking, flaming, stinking ball of gaseous shit. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. It's irresponsible to have more than one child. Have one. Have one child. Replacement value for yourself. That's all. Don't even replace your husband. Don't replace your husband. No. He's done enough fucking damage as it is. But they want to show you the pictures. Sometimes they warn you, you know, that's good. They say, hey, you want to see some pictures of my kid? No. Just describe them to me. But they show you, and there are 2 ways you can handle it. I have found 2 ways to handle the pictures. The first is the easy way. You just kind of take it all in stride, matter-of-factly, go along with the game. Uh-huh. Boy. Girl. Yeah. Older boy. Older girl. Good. 4. Listen, I have to go wash my crotch. I'll see you later. And you get the fuck out of there. Or you can do what I do. You can do what I do. Be a little honest about what you see. Take a chance. Tell the truth. Look at the fucking head on that kid. Jesus, where'd you get a fucking head like that? Holy, that thing is huge. Have you put him on YouTube yet? Boy, you get a lot of hits with a head like that. Or put him on eBay, you might make a little money, you know? I'm sure some European circus would snap his ass up in a fucking minute, boy. God damn, that thing is unusual. Listen, maybe he'll grow into it. You never know with kids, huh? Hey, let me ask you a practical question. Where do you find hats for a kid like that? Tell the truth. Don't be bullshitting people. Don't be bullshit. There's enough bullshit as it is, folks. Just plenty of bullshit. Then they want to show you the pictures of the little girl whose second teeth are coming in. And they think it's cute. It's not. It's fucking horrifying. Did you ever look at the teeth coming in on some of these kids? Did you ever take a good close look actually in the mouth? Take a look and see different, goddamn, sometimes they got 2, 3 rows of fucking teeth coming in there. All odd angles. There's one under the tongue. That's unusual. Look at that. A sublingual tooth. What do you know, huh? Once again, tell the truth. You better start saving your money right now, pal. It's gonna cost you a fucking fortune to fix that. You are gonna need an international team of orthodontists around the clock just to make it done. You might want to call FEMA. That looks like a real fucking problem to me. Look at it. Yeah, you have the number of the National Guard. Give them a ring. That's good. Listen, why don't you just have them all pulled and let her start over again, you know? Or take a picture of her with her mouth closed. That would save you a lot of heartache in the long run. Listen, you're not Catholic by any chance, are you? Well, the reason I ask you is you might want to take her to Lourdes and pray for a miracle over there. Tell the truth. Don't be bullshitting people. Like I say, there's enough bullshit as it is. There's enough bullshit as it is. In fact, there's just enough. Did you know that? There's just enough bullshit to hold things together in this country. Bullshit is the glue that binds us as a nation. Where would we be without our safe, familiar American bullshit? Land of the free, home of the brave, the American dream. All men are equal, justice is blind, the press is free, your vote counts. Business is honest, the good guys win. The police are on your side. God is watching you. Your standard of living will never decline. And everything is gonna be just fine. The official national bullshit story. I call it the American okey doke. Every one of those items is provably untrue at one level or another, but we believe them because they're pounded into our heads from the time we're children. That's what they do with that kind of thing. Pounded into the heads of kids because they know that children are much too young to be able to muster an intellectual defense against a sophisticated idea like that. And they know that up to a certain age, children believe everything their parents tell them. And as a result, they never learn to question things. Nobody questions things in this country anymore. Nobody questions anything. Everybody's too fat and happy. Everybody's got a cell phone that'll make pancakes and rub their balls now, you know? Way too fucking prosperous for our own good. Way too fucking prosperous. Americans have been bought off and silenced by toys and gizmos, and no one learns to question things. You remember? Now, okay. You remember Barbara Bush? I call her the silver douchebag. You remember her? Okay. Barbara Bush. She is the mother of Governor George Bush. I call him Governor Bush because that's the only elected office he ever held legally in our country, okay? George Bush, Governor Bush. Yeah. I don't care where they hang his portrait. I don't care how big his library is. He'll always be Governor Bush. I don't even capitalize his name when I type it anymore. So she's the mother of Governor George Bush. She's also the wife of his father, George H.W. Bush, who did become president in the normal, legal, traditional manner. And when he did, she came along for the ride as First Lady. And that's been the tradition up till now. A man has been elected, and the woman has come along for the ride as the First Lady. And usually, as in American life in general, the woman is condescended to, patronized, given something to do to keep her busy. A lot of times they give her a charity or a cause, something she can champion. Betty Ford was told to drink. Remember that? Yeah. Yeah, that was Betty Ford's assignment. Betty, you get drunk and get totally fallen down, fucked up, shit-faced drunk, okay? You just get fucked up drunk, and we'll hose you down, baby. We'll hose you down. We'll put you in a facility, you'll get sober, and then we'll put your name in the facility. Liza Minnelli can get sober, and everything's gonna be okay, right? That was her assignment. Barbara Bush's assignment was getting children to read. Remember that? Getting children to read. They figured she had had so much success with George. You know? That she would be a natural to get children to read, which misses the point completely. Not important to get children to read. Children who want to read are going to read. Kids who want to learn to read are going to learn to read. Much more important to teach children to question what they read. Children should be taught to question everything, to question everything they read, everything they hear. Children should be taught to question authority. Parents never teach their children to question authority because parents are authority figures themselves, and they don't want to undermine their own bullshit inside the household. So they stroke the kid, and the kid strokes them, and they all stroke each other, and they all grow up all fucked up, and they come to shows like this. Kids have to be warned that there's bullshit coming down the road. That's the biggest thing you can do for a kid. Tell them what life in this country is about. It's about a whole lot of bullshit that needs to be detected and avoided. That's the best thing you can do. No one told me. No one told me a thing like that. I was never warned about any of this. Had to find all of it out for myself. And there are still, as with you probably, a lot of things that you're expected to believe and accept in America that I personally have a problem with, and I question a lot of these things. Give you an example. I saw a slogan on the guy's car. It said, "Proud to be an American." And I thought, well, what the fuck does that mean? Proud to be an American. You see, I've never understood national pride. I've never understood ethnic pride because I'm Irish, and all four of my grandparents were born in Ireland, so I'm fully Irish. And when I was a kid, I would go to the St. Patrick's Day parade, and I noticed that they sold a button that said, "Proud to be Irish." And I could never understand that because I knew that on Columbus Day, they sold a different button that said, "Proud to be Italian." Then came Black Pride and Puerto Rican Pride. And Is you have no right to your opinion. Then shoot the fuck and walk away. Thank you.
All about foundations, as you noted at the outset. So I'm kind of wondering, like, what is the point of a quote nonprofit? I mean, nonprofits, if you really think about it, NGOs, whatever you call them, kind of define our country. They have more power than the Congress. I'm not sure they're working always for the public good, and they don't have to pay any taxes at all, which makes them twice as powerful as everyone else. So why do we have that system? I don't understand. How about a system where everybody pays the same tax rate, everybody, okay? Keep it low, and rich people can't get out of it. I mean, it's just a thought. And if I work at a company, you pay taxes. If I work at a church, I pay taxes. I'm pro-church. I like church, okay? But I don't see why churches shouldn't have to pay taxes. If the people go to the church, support it, that's good, right? They can tithe more. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm totally happy with that. And I just think the nonprofit thing is one of the biggest scams I've ever seen. Why does Harvard have billions and billions and billions of dollars in its endowment and it's still charging $100,000 a year to go there? So like, who's benefiting from this? Like, it doesn't, not that you'd ever go to Harvard or want to, but and many colleges are this way. Like, why are they paying no money? I'd love to hear a debate on that.
You drive down Hollywood Boulevard, and it's filled with Scientology buildings and some of the most expensive real estate in Los Angeles, and they not have to pay any taxes because L. Ron Hubbard is a nonprofit, so he's a religion. He's a religion somehow.
Yes, and they got that by suborning the IRS commissioner under Bill Clinton. And I'll never forget when that happened. And I ran into that guy at the TSA line in National Airport right after he made that decision to make Scientology a, quote, religion under U.S. tax law. And I did not have the balls to ask him. I stood right next to him in this TSA line. Fred Goldberg, I think his name was. And I want to say, you really gave tax-exempt status to L. Ron Hubbard? But it was one of those great moments in my life that I wasted through cowardice.
AIPAC had not the Jewish lobbying group, but the Pacific lobbying group of Pacific countries economically. So Xi Jinping came to San Francisco a few weeks ago, and all of a sudden, all the homeless people disappeared because Gavin Newsom decided he wanted to clean up San Francisco to impress Xi Jinping, the head of China. So what I've always suspected is that they want this homeless problem to be taking place. Like, they could fix it like that, and that proved it. That proved it, that they could fix it like that. Just a couple years ago in California, Gavin Newsom said that the state of California had a $40 billion surplus. That was a true thing. And so I've known that you could fix homelessness in the entire country for somewhere around $20 to $40 billion. And so why wouldn't he just take a couple of $1 billion and fix homelessness in his own state? And so it seems to me like the WEF and the handful of billionaires who run this country, who also run the global economy. So that's there's a scene from Network, that movie from 1974, where Ned Beatty says there are no countries, there's only companies and the global transfer of dollars. And so we're really living in that. And I think that there's and so the people in Congress and obviously the president they don't run things. They're taking orders. They're taking orders from the donor class, which is a handful of billionaires that run everything. And for some reason, they want to have an open border. They want to have us flooded with immigrants. I know why that is. But they want to keep homelessness. And there's plenty of theories why. One of them is because it's a fentanyl line. They can't go into the homeless encampments. But I think I heard a Scottish I can't think of his name. That we just covered him. Neil Oliver say, it's there to make.
I know Neil Oliver. Yeah,
he's a great guy. He said that it's there to make people who are on edge stay on edge, and so that's why it's in every city, and they can fix it like that, and they won't do it.
Of course.
And what is your theory on why they won't fix the homelessness problem and why they won't give people living wage and why they won't give people health care like the rest of the goddamn world? What is your theory on this?
Well, I mean, it's the same as all the things that make your life worse. Low-level crime, high-level crime is never punished, as you know. The big financial crimes are never punished. How many people went to prison after the meltdown of 08?
Zero.
I'm just doing the math, right around zero. Right.
Well, they did
But,
find a
of
Chinese
course,
bank. They did find some Chinese bankers in New York. Remember that? Okay, go ahead.
Exactly, but fine. But the low-level stuff they love because it makes you miserable. It makes you miserable. You expect less. You're off balance. And it's, of course, all together, it amounts to chaos. That's exactly what it is. It's chaos. You feel like things are completely out of control. When you show up, to 7-Eleven and like everything is locked because there's so much shoplifting and you have to step over some passed out guy to get in there and there's a crazy person screaming at you by the cooler. The net effect is to make you feel like, man, this is completely out of control. And I think this is a predicate for a change of government, the form of government. I do think that. The one thing we know they hate is the one thing they claim they love, which is democracy. They hate that. What's democracy? It's the majority kind of gets to decide roughly where we go next. That's the one thing they can't handle because all the decisions are made by such a tiny group. And so they are working as hard as they possibly can to make us dissatisfied with what we have as a first step toward getting us to change it and to be willing to accept a much more authoritarian form of government, which is coming very soon. It's obvious. I don't want that. It's the opposite of what I want. I don't think I'm a conspiracy nut or crazy, but all the evidence kind of points that it's sort of overwhelming. Like, why else would you do this? You don't need to have any of these problems. By the way, you don't even need to go full fascist to end crime. You just need to have laws like, hey, don't steal. Stealing doesn't help anybody. That's bullshit. No poor people benefit from stealing. There are no stores in poor people's areas. You ever been to one? So it's not helping. They're only doing it to hurt. Why are they doing that? Because they plan on making a change in the way that we're governed.
You could order stuff at Amazon, see what a pain it is to go to a store.
So that was the craziest thing.
Well, and there's that.
The craziest thing about COVID, as I picked up on quickly, was that I couldn't go to a local sporting goods store on the corner of my block and buy a catcher's mitt for my nephew for Christmas, but I could order one which only has one person working in it. But I could order one from Amazon, which has thousands of people working inside a giant warehouse.
Exactly.
And that was supposed to be for our safety, which, again, if you just look at it on the face, it doesn't make any logical sense. So you're being lied to, and they're trying to change the economy. And then what happened with the truckers? And by the way, the truckers were vaccinated at a higher rate than the general population. They weren't protesting medicine. They were protesting bullshit authoritarianism, and they were right. And so when I looked at the truckers, I saw white truckers, I saw black truckers, I saw native truckers, I saw Indian truckers with the beard and the thing. And then when I saw that, I was like, white supremacists, a lot of white supremacists. And then, of course, they called them Nazis, and then they shut down their bank accounts, which was proven to be garbage. But that's what they want. That's why they want to move.
And then saluted a Nazi later.
And then they salute. Then they literally
Stewart
they all saluted a Nazi in their parliament. And then they blamed it on Russia. I swear to God, that's what they did. So this digital currency that's coming, right? So they wanted to get you there. Now I go to places they don't even take cash, which I don't know if you look at the dollar bill, it says this is for all debts, private and public. And if you go to a store, they don't take cash. Yes. That is not a good thing, right?
No, it's a terrifying thing. And look, this is the way, you always imagine when you're a kid and you're reading about the Second World War and the rise of fascism in Europe, you always imagined that it would look like the pictures you saw. There would be guys in tight uniforms goose-stepping through your town. But of course, it's America, so nothing happens that way. Nothing is obvious. Everything is the seduction that you buy into voluntarily because it's easy, it's convenient. And what you don't realize is that you're making a bargain. And for that ease and convenience, you're trading your freedom and your individuality and your privacy and all the things that make you human. And so cash is exactly the same way. It's not like they've banned ATM machines. They're just slowly making it much less common for people to use cash, much less convenient for people to use cash. And in 4 or 5 years, no one will use cash. And so at that point, you have, in effect, digital currency. It's just kind of that simple. Because, by the way, MBNA or whoever issues your stupid credit card is every bit as tied in to the permanent bureaucracy in Washington and subject to its demands as any federal agency. So after 9/11, after January 6th, they immediately got the credit card companies to send them, the FBI, the transaction records of anyone who went to a gun store in, the 15 zip codes around DC for the week preceding and following January 6th. So, and they complied without telling the customer. So they're giving your private information to a law enforcement agency without telling you. Now, that used to be illegal, but the Congress has made it legal, famously after 9/11. And so those are the people who are going to control the currency. I'm not sure the central bank has to issue a digital currency. I don't think it's necessary. You just get the big credit card issuers on board, and all of a sudden they'll just, as they have with dissidents over the past couple of years, no, you can't stay at Airbnb. Sorry. No, you can't transact anything over Venmo. We don't like your politics. I mean, that's where we're going, obviously, at high speed. It's not 10 years, it's 2 years.
China.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
And so what they do, all they have to do, well, thank God for Barack Obama when he signed the NDAA section, I think 1021, where they repealed habeas corpus. So habeas corpus, which means you have a right to a speedy trial, and what all they have to do now is say that you're a terrorist and you don't get a right to a trial. They could give you indefinite detention. Now, let's remember, habeas corpus was in the Magna Carta. So we are operating on a liberty view.
It precedes our country.
Yeah, we're operating on a liberty view somewhere around the 1100s. That's how far back we've gone. And so all they have to do is call you a terrorist.
Right.
And so, when people were protesting DAPL, they said they were eco terrorists. And so that all they have to do is say you're a terrorist, and they can throw you in jail indefinitely. They can shut down your bank account. They can do anything they want. And then thank God to Barack Obama. And they say Trump is the guy who's the enemy of democracy. That somehow Trump is the threat. Now, my theory is that why they hate Trump so much. By the way, you're right that they hate democracy. What's the two biggest Democratic actions that have gone against the establishment in the last 10 years? Trump being elected and Brexit. And they hate both those things.
Yeah.
And they can't let people have democracy. So they do it's such a great you accuse your enemy of the thing you're doing. Trump is going to take away your democracy. No, you're the one taking away my democracy. Trump is going to prosecute journalists. No, you're the one who's trying to kill Julian Assange. Barack Obama was the one who used the Espionage Act more than all the presidents preceded him to prosecute journalists. It was Barack Obama who did that. Wasn't Trump. All right. So the exact opposite is happening. And people, go ahead, Kurt, you want to say something?
Trump and Brexit, that was like their citizens voting for Hamas in their eyes.
That's right.
Like us in 2006.
That's right.
We gave you a vote and you voted Hamas.
You voted wrong. So my theory on why they hate Trump is twofold. Because they all love Trump. Right? My whole life, he was invited on every late night talk show. He was on the cover of every magazine. They gave him his own television show for 10 years. They gave him Emmy nominations. Every star from Hollywood came and bent the knee and called him Mr. Trump. They all golf together. Their kids are all best friends. They all go to each other's third and fourth weddings. They all got on jets and fucked kids together on Jeffrey Epstein's island. So why do they hate Trump now? Why? And my theory is they hate Trump now was because he ran on an anti-interventionist platform and won, and then actually was an anti-interventionist. He is the only president in my lifetime didn't start a war. And then he actually told the truth about our foreign policy. They asked him, why are you leaving troops in Syria? And he said, for the oil. And you can't do that because the whole world saw the president of the United States just give the game away of our foreign policy, which has been for the last 50 years, which was we invade smaller countries, we steal their natural resources, and we give it to Western companies. Do you agree that's why they hate Trump?
There's literally no question about it. I watched it happen. I mean, I knew Bill Kristol well. I worked for him for 5 years in the 90s. And I remember very, very well. It was the winter of 2016. Kristol didn't like Trump, but he didn't hate him. And he was writing about it all the time. And maybe there's a way we can work with Trump. Looks like he's going to be the nominee. And, we can do this. And I don't mean to single out Bill Kristol. He's obviously sort of sad old guy at this point, but he kind of represents the mindset of a lot of people in Washington, particularly in the foreign policy world. So that's exactly where he was until the night of the Republican primary debate in, I think it was Columbia, South Carolina.
Yes.
It was in Greenville, South Carolina, in 2016. And that's the debate at which Trump said, said to Jeb, like, your brother lied and got us into war, and that war was a disaster, the Iraq War. Well, I'll never forget it as long as I live. And all the morons on TV, political reporting is the easiest kind of reporting, so it tends to draw lower IQ people and much more conventional people. And they're all like, oh, that's the end of his campaign. South Carolina has the highest percentage of military veterans of any state, and they're going to hate that. And I remember thinking, I think they'll probably love it. Like the guys whose lives were destroyed by these wars, who didn't see, went on 3 or 4 tours, didn't see their kids get divorced or got injured or killed. Like, they know how pointless that was better than anyone else in the country. And of course, that was true, and he won the South Carolina primary. But the takeaway in Washington was, this guy must be stopped. That's the red line. I didn't realize it at the time. I had no idea. I had a lot of theories about what the red line was, but I didn't realize that it was criticizing neocon foreign policy, because I thought that foreign policy was completely discredited. I mean, I thought people like Liz Cheney or, all the Paul Wolfowitz, all the people who pushed that nonsense, Victoria Nuland, I thought that they were like in exile. I never imagined they would be back to run everything, because their track record was just an unbroken chain of disasters that hurt our country. And I'm just way too literal, I guess. But it turns out not only were they back, they were never not back. They were always in charge. And Trump, that's the thing he did. And they have never forgiven him for it. When he questioned NATO, why do we have NATO? And I thought, man, why do we have NATO? I still don't know the answer. Of course, to cause untold mischief around the world, to degrade our power, drain our treasury, kill people. I mean, NATO is indefensible as currently constituted. But when he said that, then I thought they might assassinate him for saying that. You can't criticize NATO. What if the Soviets invade Germany? It's like so demented.
With cheap gas.
What if they?
with cheap gas and pretty women. Whoop.
I never forget after that debate. I was watching the talking heads afterwards, and Charles Krautheimer said that Trump's campaign is over because you can't go against the Iraq war. And I was like, are you nuts? People are cheering in the streets for him saying that. And of course, I mean, that's the kind of exactly what you said. I couldn't believe Charles. I'm like, wow, I knew he was a shill for the establishment. That was like over the top. That was amazing. So now, you took
but they all believed it. That was the thing. It was so bad.
Yeah.
David Frum still goes on Bill Maher and gets quoted by Sam Harris. David Frum.
So let me.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yes. So let me. Bill
he
Maher
gets quoted. Sam Harris.
Yeah, we played a clip of it.
Bill Maher just the other night.
Trump violated norms, Tucker.
There's international norms, Tucker. You can't violate the norms. And so, and Bill Maher still is under the impression that Ukraine has only lost 70,000 soldiers.
Average age 43. They only had 70,000 young men in the whole country.
That's it.
And they're gone.
So they've lost hundreds of thousands. Why do you think that Germany and Europe has gone along with the Ukraine war? Because now, Germany is paying 4 times the rate for energy than they were before we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Why would their politicians continue to go along with it? Is it because NATO, we have 800 or 900 military bases around the country? We just built 2 inside Syria, 2 military bases inside someone else's country that we're occupying while we're calling Putin a thug. So why do you think Germany and Europe would go along with us screwing them over on their energy?
That's such a great question. I did, because I was unemployed this summer, I went to Europe 6 times this summer and went all around, and everywhere I went, I asked that same question. So NATO blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, which was the largest source of cheap energy into the only really important country in Europe, the economic engine of Europe, which is Germany. And wrecked your economy probably for all time, and you don't say anything about it. And why is that? And You can never get a straight answer. It's deeply embarrassing if you bring it up. It's like you're not. And so what are you looking at? Well, you're looking at, I mean, Germany's been occupied for 80 years by American troops. And you're looking really at what happens when a country loses a catastrophic war. Same in Japan, by the way. You get this weird conquered peoples syndrome where they turn the rage inward and they hate themselves. The Germans really, really hate themselves. And I think it's evident in their sex lives and their scatological habits, but it's also really evident in the way they conduct their politics. No, I'm dead serious. The problem is that people who really hate themselves are dangerous to you. You're never going to be well treated by a person who hates himself. Yeah. He hates you too. Like, those are the scariest kind of people. So if, like, you're worried about a resurgence of German nationalism, you're worried about the Germans deciding, hey, you know, we've spent centuries killing people, we're going to do it again. Keep this up. I mean, that is not healthy in any way. If your so-called ally destroys your country for generations, which is what the Biden administration did when they took out the Nord Stream pipeline, and you don't even feel like you can say anything about it. It's like some dude's in the process of raping your wife, but you're too embarrassed to mention it. I mean, that's literally what that is. You're a sick fuck, and you're capable of anything. I mean that.
We have a pact with NATO countries that we're supposed. But we just screwed over all the NATO countries in Europe.
Oh, I know.
I know. We attack them in the most egregious way you can by screwing over their energy, and
also the environment. You know, the largest emission of man-made
methane. And
Thank you.
That came from the environmental president Joe Biden.
Exactly.
In history, no larger emission.
In history.
Yes.
Now you took a lot of heat. And I think the reason why you lost a lot of your advertisers, correct me if I'm wrong on this, is because of what you would say about the border and what you said about immigration, correct? Would you agree with that, or am I wrong?
That's where they first hit me, that I was racist for saying that the U.S. government exists to serve the interests of Americans, and that I've never been against immigration. I'm not against immigration now. But, uncontrolled immigration makes your country worse, and it makes it less tidy, and it makes it dirtier, which I said, and they claimed that I called immigrants dirty because I was a Nazi. I don't think immigrants are dirty. I'm not a Nazi. I like virtually every immigrant I've ever met, legal or illegal, but it is a fact when you go, I grew up near the border, so I know if you have chaos anywhere, it's going to be untidy. And I believe in a country that is tidy, which means that even if you don't have a lot of money, you live in pleasant circumstances. You're not crowded shoulder to shoulder in some crappy, tenement or split-level house in the exurbs among garbage. Like, I believe in the dignity of the average person. That's what I was trying to say. And this is not conducive to human dignity at all. We're treating these people like animals in the way that we're using them and manipulating them, these foreigners. And we're treating our own population with no respect whatsoever. And anyway, I was a racist for saying that, but I still believe it.
So I have come around on this issue, and I realized that there actually is a game being played. And here is Dick Durbin, and he's going to give the game away. This is about a week or two ago. Dick Durbin gave a speech, and it was all about why we need immigration and why we have to take all the people who are here illegally and as quickly as possible turn them into citizens. And he's going to give the game away right here. Here we go. And by the way, he's got all the fire in the belly of Fred Rogers. Here we go. Watch.
We need order at the border. Yes, we need to have changes in the laws that reflect the reality of the overwhelming numbers from all over the world who are coming to our shores and our border. But there is also an incredible demand for legal immigration into this country even now.
Why?
The presiding officer, my colleague from the state of Illinois, has legislation which addresses one aspect of that. Her bill, and I hope I describe it accurately, says that if you're an undocumented person in this country and you can pass the physical and the required test, background test, the like, you can serve in our military, and if you do it honorably, we will make you citizens of the United States. Do we need that? Do you know what the recruiting numbers are at the Army and the Navy and the Air Force? They can't reach their quotas each month.
So he just so there it is. He's the reason why our border has about the same level of security as your Facebook page is because we need foreign slaves as conscripts. That's what we do. The Yankees are wising up to the scam of these foreign wars, and what's going to drive people into the shredder? The old standby, desperation. Right?
Of New York.
So right, so there's people who don't want to join their own military, but they want to go to someone else's country and join their military. That's really what they want. So we need immigrants for our Squid Games. That's what he's saying. Hey, and not just for the military.
And that's the best case scenario. That's the best case. I mean, first of all, they drove a lot of, anyone with self-respect was already driven out of the military by the vax mandates. So the high testosterone population has dropped dramatically in the military, and they do have a massive recruiting problem. Now, I would say the answer is clean up the military, give it missions that the average person can support. People aren't joining the military because they don't support the mission.
That's right.
Right? They don't want to die or send their sons to die for Ukraine. Sorry. But we should consider another possibility here. So if they were about 50 million people without undocumented, illegal, whatever you want to call them, foreign nationals in our country who are not citizens. In a lot of cases, we don't know who they are. So if you're, and the majority of the ones who have come in the last 3 years are young military-age men. So if we say, okay, all of a sudden you get to join the military, and our military is populated by people who don't know anything about the United States at all, you have to consider the possibility that the point is not to use them to fight another foreign war, but the point may be to use them domestically. And the U.S. military increasingly, certainly over the last 3 years, but really over the last couple of decades, has been used for domestic purposes, not the National Guards. That's constitutional. The governor calls the Guard out, right? There's a problem. But the standing U.S. military has been used, and its intel services have been used. And that is the case on January 6th, but I think it's the case much more often than that. So if all of a sudden you're saying our military, we should give automatic weapons to people who just got here from foreign countries who we know nothing about at all, and those people can be used to keep order in the United States, I mean, this is literally how Rome fell. I mean, as you may or may not know, literally taking foreigners into the legions, and all of a sudden they're like, well, wait a second, we don't know what this Rome thing is, and we're not into it. And they ended the empire. They ended Rome. So we should be very careful about this because it's at scale, because it's tens of millions of people. It's not like if you're my age, 54, you grew up thinking, well, I have very positive feelings. Again, I grew up near the border of immigrants, like trying hard and like, it's hard to get here. It's a hassle. You're doing all the shit jobs no one will do. And it's sort of like good people, I would say. But if you import tens of millions of people all at once, like you don't know exactly who's there or why they're here or like, what is this? You could capsize your country really easily with stuff like this. Last thing I'll say is that Dick Durbin's an evil man. I don't think he's mistaken. I don't think he's misguided. I don't think any of this is an accident. I think he's a servant of evil, and I really mean that.
Tucker, he said he's going to make them cops as well.
Oh, wait, I'll go on. Yeah. Watch this. So he has more to say. So then he goes on. Another reason why, we have this open border. Here we go.
Find enough people to join our military forces. And there are those who are undocumented who want the chance to serve and risk their lives for this country.
Yeah.
Should we give them the chance? I think we should.
Yeah, so we just need to take away every other avenue and then let them walk up the ramp just like cattle. Sometimes it amazes me how much our culture operates like a factory farm. It really is. I think it's important to know how the sausage is being made, but if they are using us to make the